Good evening, this is Damien from the Extra Arcade, but you probably already knew that. Today we're going to continue our series in random history of pubs facts, and we're going to continue that today with the history of pool. Obviously we have a lovely pool table just to my right. It might be left when it gets onto the recording, it flips it around and it's all weird. We've got a pool table just over there, which many of you enjoy. Watch this space, we're going to be doing a later video, a bit later in the next week or two. We're actually going to strip that thing right down and clean it all out and maybe show you the internal workings of it all. But today we're going to focus just on the history, because it's actually got a lot of history, and it's one of those things I could probably sit here for hours and hours and hours and talk about the history of pool. Haven't got hours and hours, trying to condense this down to about 5 minutes. So this is a very, very brief history on pool. So pool actually started off as a game of billiards. For those of you who've never played billiards before, the bar version of billiards was a small table, much smaller than a normal pool table, and you would have to poke the ball up to the back and bounce it into various little holes, a bit like a golf type thing. There's many, many abbreviations of that, but that's what the original sort of table game was. This was originally sort of late medieval period, early Victorian period, actually probably early Elizabethan, sorry, was actually a lawn sport. You played it on your lawn, which is why it was only really a sport for the upper gentry, upper class people, people with a little bit of money, because you needed a massive lawn to play it. It was a bit like croquet back in those days. And there's some evidence to suggest that actually they both sort of originated from the same origins. So yeah, we have billiards as a lawn game initially. Yeah, it was around 15th century. Then sort of all these entrepreneurs of the time went, well, we could turn this into a table game. We can make a massive table. And if you've ever seen a Victorian billiards table, they're huge. I physically would not be able to fit one in this pub. They're massive. Think of your average snooker table and how much bigger those things are than a pub pool table. They're a little bit bigger than that. So they brought billiards indoors. Now, while they were playing with it, is they're actually using, they didn't have pool cues like this. They had what they called maces, and they had a little flat bit on the end here, so you could scoop the ball and you would push it along. You'd put it up against the felt and you'd slide it along, and you would shove the ball that way, and that's how you'd slide it around. Also, the sides on an old billiards table were just made of wood. They weren't there for any gaming purpose. They were just there to stop the ball falling off the table when you were trying to bat it around to get it into the various holes that you had on the table. So it wasn't actually until 1839 that those sides stopped being used as just to sort the balls off. People were hitting them and trying to do what they called bank shots, known as a bank because it resembled a riverbank. They're calling these bank shots to try and bounce the balls off every other way like you would do today on a modern table. And it was Charles Goodyear, bloke with the tyres, who invented the process of manufacturing rubber. And he came up with this idea, well, let's put some rubber on there because then it'll make the ball bounce. And if it makes the ball bounce, you can add this whole new strategy of gaming to play in there. He's also credited as creating the first ever rubber condom. Think about that next time you're having a good year. But yeah, so that's the game of billiards. And yeah, like we said, they didn't have a nice stick like this. They had a little shunter on the end, and they would shunt it away with their mace. And a lot of them were realising that actually, if we turned it around and we hit it a bit like that, or a bit like that as it would be on a modern one, they could hit the balls and the balls would travel further, they'd have more impact, and it was actually easier to get them into the various pockets. So they would take their mace, they would turn it round to the tail end, also known as the cue, and they would play it like that. And that's where we get the name cue from. Obviously a bit later they then started adding leather to the end of these, and we use felt nowadays, but there's a bit of leather on there so you wouldn't damage the balls, because Back then they were made of ivory, which was very, very expensive and very fashionable. So they put a little bit of leather there to prevent that and to protect the pool table itself. But yeah, then through the 1960s, British manufacture got into its head. Where can we want to expand this game? We want to make it more popular. Let's put it in pubs. Pubs with lots of men who want to discuss strategy and politely prove that they're the best, and there's lots of penny games that you play with shuffleboards and things, and it's not that much of a way to go. Well, instead of shuffling pennies around, pack some balls around, and you can give your penny to the barman to let him use his table. Obviously, billiards tables, like I said earlier, were massive, and that's where we then get what we know. Well, originally we had pub billiards, bar billiards, which was played on a tiny table. There used to be one in the monkey suit. Used to have a little bar billiards table. I don't think they've got it in there anymore, sadly. But they're tiny. They're just a little table, and you play, bounce all the balls in there. So they came in quite happy with those. Yeah, it was around the 1960s that all these companies started going to pubs and going, look, we've got this amazing game. Manufacturing is going nuts. We can actually make it cheap enough that you could have it in your pub. And then all the pubs went, yeah, it's good and all, but we really don't have the space for these massive tables. The downsized the table a bit, made snooker. Snooker is an evolution of billiards, much closer than the pool is. And yep, still really not, a little bit too big for us. And so they downsized the table, they downsized the number of balls you needed to it, and effectively came up with what we now know today as pool. As I've said many, many a time before in these videos, that is a very, very quick, very, very brief history of pool and its evolution into pubs and how it came from being played on the lawn by the upper gentry to being the working classes game. And, you know, it was the working classes game for many years. It's in your local pub. You come and enjoy it. Our table is 50p if you want to come and play a game. We are the cheapest pool table in the whole of Exeter. Just going to wear that one with pride. There'll be a couple more videos coming up soon because we are looking to do a complete restoration of that whilst we're in lockdown. Brand new cushions, brand new felt, and we'll even show you the internal workings and mechanics of a pool table. Other than that, thank you very much. Those of you who I have not seen on Facebook, on Thursday, so that's Thursday the 23rd, we will be giving away free churros. You spend a tenner on a Deliveroo, you'll get a free portion of churros from us. So other than that, only remains for me to say thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.